Welcome back to another episode of Gamer Zero, where we spread that gaming truth like a virus. So I'm back at it, your boy T Hill. Want to talk about something. I've heard it over the last year from people in the industry, game journalists, and I wanted to put my 2 cents on it mainly because one journalist, a big name, and I brought him up on the last two shows, and I want to throw it up again because I got to give Greg Miller shout outs. Nothing against Greg Miller, nice guy, but the topic, he opened the door for me to talk about this subject matter. You know the title. I'm talking about finishing your games as a journalist before you put out a review. And people are probably thinking, why am I talking about Greg Miller? Because I said it when I did the video, my first one about IGN and the Dead Island, but I got the comment saying, no, he finished the game. Not at the time of review. By the time he finished it, by the time the review was put out, he may have finished it. But when he worked on the review, he had not finished it. Keep this in mind. Greg Miller did not finish Dead Island by the time he put his review together. I want you guys to really drill this home. And if you're saying that's not true, we heard on a podcast. By the time that podcast aired, he had finished it. Or so says he. And the reason why I say this is because comments just response to the resounding influx of emails and comments about the whole Dead Island review on IGN. They did a response things, and one of the responses specifically, it clearly states from Greg Miller, he had put in 20 hours on his main character. Not that he had finished the game. He goes on and talks about how he only did the side quests for the beginning portion. And I don't want this to devolve back into the whole Dead Island thing. But I've heard this a lot from journalists. And I'm not going to say anyone else's name. Because the people who told me in confidence. But Greg Miller opened the door for this. Now that we know that journalists, and I've known this for a while, now that you guys are hearing it, that journalists don't finish their games before they put out their reviews. How do you feel about that? Is it ethical? Are they doing right by you? I am a little torn, being a journalist myself. People can say you're a blogger or whatever to me. I don't care. But I look at it as there's multiple aspects to look at. Part of me wants to look at it as like if I'm a critic and I go to a movie and I leave halfway through the movie and then I write a review on it. I don't care if the movie was shitty and then it got better or it was shitty the whole way through. If you leave before the whole thing's over, how do you really know, how do you know you're providing a thorough review? And the cop-out that a lot of journalists say is I was able to provide a good sampling based off the material I absorbed. Well, just like anything, a product, a game, whatever, they get better over time. So if a production for a game is 2-3 years, if you only sample the first part of the game, which was very good likelihood that was built in the first year or so of development, before all the polish and the tweaks, you may get a really bad taste. Because I've played games that have gotten better on the second portion of the game. So that whole sampling thing, I played enough to sample the experience. To me, it's a torn experience. So the first part is like, I don't feel that journalist is doing due diligence to you, the reader, the consumer, the gamer, the developer, the publisher that gives them the free copy, the review copy. So there's that part of it. But the other part of it is there are some times where it may not be essential for a journalist to finish a game before they review it. One would be an MMO. Perfect example. Hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours will go by before they finish it. Plus, MMOs are kind of always in beta. So, yes, they're launched, but they're ever evolving and they improve over time. So, you could do a review sampling of this is how the game was at this point, but it's going to change rather quickly. Patches and all the upgrades and expansions and things like that. So, MMOs also another time where I don't see it's absolutely like essential that a reviewer plays through the whole game is if it's a port of a game you've already played. But the criteria is you have to have played the original version all the way through. So, say like the God of War Origins. I've played the other God of War, the PSP titles, so I could do a review on it. But the main thing I really want to drill home is the new features that were added. So as long as I cover that, I honestly think I'm doing due diligence to you guys. So I wanted to put this out there. How do you guys feel knowing that journalists don't always finish games before they drop the review? And I know the IGN crowd's going to come back here because they're not even going to pay attention because a lot of these sheep are just that, sheep. They won't go back and look at the comments, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to devolve in that. But yeah, I'm going to use Greg Miller again as an example because he openly says, I only got 20 hours in. And you don't know if that's an uptick, a downtick. You don't know where that goes. So I want to know how you guys feel about journalists. Remember, this is the point here. Stay with me. Journalists finishing their games or not before they produce their review. How do you guys feel? So I want to know what you guys think. As always, leave your comments below. I'm always on Twitter, so hit me up on Twitter. Yeah, follow me on hiphopgamershow.com. On Twitter, it's T_Hill0. Or if you want to game with me online, it's T-Hill. All right, I'm out. Peace.